Interviewing is a skill that requires practice and strategic preparation. It can be very exciting to receive an invite for an interview, but you may be feeling a bit nervous about what to expect. To prepare you, this presentation will discuss interview formats, common questions to expect, and helpful techniques that will teach you how to leave a lasting impression with a potential employer. Let's start with, what is an interview? An interview is a conversation between you and one or more members from an organization to discuss your qualifications for a job opportunity. If you have been selected for an interview, this means that your resume and other application materials did its job at sparking the employer's interest, and now they are ready to meet you. While you may think interviewing is about providing a correct answer, it's more about giving the best response that will help the employer learn more about who you are. The best way to share this information is through storytelling. When interviewing multiple candidates for a job or internship, employers usually ask the same set of questions to assess all candidates' fit, skills, and motivation. The thing that sets you apart from other candidates are your personal stories that demonstrate your fit, skills, and motivation. Using stories of your experiences is the best way to engage the employer so they will remember who you are after the interview. You should know what stories you would like to share that will highlight your skills that relate to the position for which you are interviewing. Keep in mind, you want to trigger the employer's imagination, so be specific and add the detail that your story deserves. What is a transferable skill? Transferable skills are a skill or ability that can be used in a variety of jobs and industries. Examples include communication, critical thinking, time management, teamwork, and adaptability. So think about, what are examples of transferable skills that you have? How did you develop these transferable skills, and what stories can you tell that highlight these transferable skills? Here's some information the employer will expect you to share: your interest in the job, company, or industry, why you applied for the position, your strengths and related skills, relevant experience consistent with information listed on your resume, and the reasons why you're a good fit for the job. And the Robo Interview is a live recorded video that will present a question through a prompt on your computer and allow you a few seconds to prepare an answer with usually one attempt to respond. These interviews often serve as an initial screening of all candidates, in which the employer's goal is to slim down their list of people to consider. This is their process of elimination, so it's important that you nail this. These interviews will typically last from 15 to 30 minutes and will hopefully be followed by an offer for a face-to-face interview. Since you would need a quiet space to hold your interview session, consider reserving a room at the Mastrantoni Family Student Success Commons or other places on campus where you will not be interrupted or distracted. You should also dress professionally. This is recommended even for a phone interview. Although the interviewer cannot see you, feeling more professional will help you perform better. Let's discuss strategies for nailing these types of interviews. For the phone interview, you may feel that there is less pressure since you are not in front of the interviewer, but it will be harder to build rapport. In person, you can tell if the interviewer is disengaged by their eyes roaming to other parts of the room, or if they give an expression that suggests they are bored and not paying attention. You will not have this advantage over the phone, so your excitement and enthusiasm should drive the energy of the conversation to keep them engaged. Standing up periodically will help you maintain that energy during the call. Have your resume and any notes in front of you. An advantage of not being seen is that you can look down at your paper and refer to your notes as needed. Now, this doesn't mean you should read word for word from your notes. That will be obvious and make you sound too robotic over the phone. Simply refer to your resume and notes as needed. It's also a good idea to write down questions that you are asked in case you are asked those questions again in the next step of the interviewing process. You can use those questions to practice from and prepare better responses. Be comfortable with silent pauses. Although you may feel awkward or uneasy when there is silence, talking to avoid it tends to make most people go off on tangents or babble unconsciously. The person you are speaking with may be taking notes or gathering their thoughts about your response. Silence does not necessarily mean there is something wrong, so allow the silent pauses. Never use speakerphone. It's a dialogue, and you want to be sure you can keep up with the conversation and hear the person you are speaking with clearly. Lastly, never put the person you are speaking with on hold. Be mindful that this is the time that they've taken out of their day to spend on the phone with you, and you are expected to be prepared with no reason to pause the conversation. Let's move on to the specific tips for video and robo interviews. Next, the video and robo interviews. For these interviews, you should treat them as if you are meeting the interviewer in person. You will either be seen in a live video or in a recorded video, so your facial expressions, eye contact, and appearance are all important. This means you should look directly in the camera when speaking during the interview instead of focusing on the image of yourself or the interviewer on the screen. To prepare, you should test the camera and audio settings to make sure the camera is positioned properly to fit the top half of your body. You should also check that the area behind you is not distracting and that the sound is working and set to a decent volume. If you are using a live video system such as Zoom, make sure your Zoom name is listed as just your first and last name. As you are trying to leave a good impression, titling your account by a nickname is not appropriate. You also want to make it easy for the employer to find you in the system. Since these interviews require a computer, be sure to close your browser and exit out of all applications that you may have open. You can easily get distracted by a notification or an email that pops up on your screen during the interview, and you don't want to lose your focus. Here's some additional tips. Be sure to choose a location where there is a strong internet or phone connection to avoid dropped or failed calls. Again, you want to demonstrate that you're prepared for the interview, and choosing a location conducive for a remote interview is a huge part of your preparation. Turn off all electronic devices except for the one you may be using for the interview. This includes a television, game system, tablets, or other devices that can distract you. If you have pets and decide to hold the interview while at home, be sure your pet is in a separate room and cannot be seen or heard. Finally, be ready for your interview 10 minutes before the scheduled time. It's not uncommon for an interview to begin a few minutes early. Now let's move on to the on-site interview. These interviews allow you to meet your potential employer face-to-face. You may experience one of the following: an individual interview that includes you and one interviewer, a group interview that involves multiple candidates that are interviewed simultaneously, or a panel interview that involves multiple interviewers with one candidate. Remember, these interviews can potentially follow the initial screening and will last for at least 30 minutes to 1 hour or more hours depending on the number of people you may interview with. Know where you are going for the interview. Drive to the location prior to the day of the interview to plan for timing to leave home, to get an idea for the route that you will take to the site and where you will park. Make sure you have a list of items that you will need for that day. We'll talk more specifically about what you should bring later in the presentation. Last, always dress professionally. In general, you should always be respectful to everyone you meet. This includes other candidates if they are present and other members of the organization that you may meet but not interview with. Greet everyone you meet with a firm handshake and properly introduce yourself by clearly stating who you are. Finally, make sure you arrive 15 minutes early for the interview and walk in the door 10 minutes prior to the start time. This will allow you time to park, get water, or do a final check in the mirror. For the on-site interview, it is essential to bring what you need to feel prepared. Even though you have already submitted your resume to the employer, bring extra copies as you can offer one to anyone you meet with. Bring a pad folio or a folder, a notepad and a pen so you can take notes or write down any questions you may have during the interview. It's best to leave your cell phone and other personal items in the car. You want to make sure you aren't hauling around your bag or other items. Now that you have a good understanding of the different formats of interviews, let's review some interview questions that you may be asked. Here are 3 types of interview questions. Basic questions refer generally to your professional background and current experiences. Behavioral-based questions rely on the idea that your past behavior will predict your future behavior and performance. This is when you can really use your storytelling skills and give concrete examples of your related experiences. And last, situational questions, which will help the interviewer understand how you handle and respond to challenging situations. These are a few basic questions to expect during your interview. When an employer says, "Tell me about yourself," your response can resemble your elevator pitch. Mention your year status and major, your most recent and relevant professional experience, your involvement on campus, and generally the experience you are seeking to gain next, which should be aligned with the position you are interviewing for. You may also be asked about your strengths and weaknesses. Be able to describe how your strength connects to what is required for the job. Describing a weakness can be tricky, but avoid making statements such as, "I work too hard." Instead, state an area of weakness with a quick example of how you are improving in that area. Why do you want to work here? This should be a question that you ask yourself early on in your search process. The employer wants to know specifically why you chose to apply to that position at their company. This is when your research about the company will come in handy. Be sure you can articulate your interest in that company based on their unique qualities. Next, how did your experience relate to this position? You should speak from experiences listed on your resume and talk in detail about how those experiences have prepared you for your job. Use skill-based language here. Finally, you will be asked a question related to ways you will add value to the organization or company. Your response will convince the employer that you are a good investment and a good fit. You should articulate how you will apply your unique skills and make a significant contribution. Next are behavior-based questions. Remember, these are questions that focus on predictive behavior. This is where your storytelling skills really come in handy. Let's review a few example questions. First, give an example of a time when you faced a conflict while working with a team, and how did you handle it? This question is framed around teamwork. Your response should help the interviewer understand how you work with others despite personal or difficult situations. The next question reads, sometimes it is not possible to get everything done on your to-do list. Tell me about a time when your responsibilities became overwhelming. How did you handle it? This is an opportunity to use your academic experience as an example. This question is referring to your time management skills. You can refer to your ability to balance your academic work with participating in an athletic team, student organizations, or an on-campus job. Choose activities that effectively demonstrate how well you manage your time. Next, tell me about a time when you were able to persuade someone to see things your way. This question refers to your communication skills and your ability to change perspective. Last, tell me about a time you were dissatisfied with your work. What could have been done to make it better? This question is all about motivation, how you motivate yourself to still be successful when you may experience failure or dissatisfaction. Your response should tell the interviewer about your self-awareness and your desire to produce quality work. As you see from the examples, these questions typically start with, tell me about a time when, or give an example when. This will indicate that you should tell a story in order to highlight your skills and relevant experience. When answering behavior-based questions, use the STAR technique. This stands for situation, task, action, and result. First, describe the situation to the interviewer. This allows you to set up the story. Be sure to provide enough detail so the interviewer can imagine what you are describing and try to spend just a short amount of time doing this. Explain your task in the situation. What was your responsibility? Tell them about your role or assignment that you were charged with. Next, talk about the action you took to complete that task. Use skill-based language here and articulate ways you may use your analytical or problem-solving skills. And finally, explain the result of your work and what were your contributions towards improving the work of the organization. What were your successes? Mention any quantified results. For example, if your marketing efforts helped to increase attendance at an annual event, mention the increased number of attendees. It's best to present the most concrete and measurable evidence of your work. If you weren't necessarily successful in your work, consider what you learned that you could use when you are in that situation again. You should always end your answer with a positive outlook, so speaking about your takeaways and what you've learned will tell the employer that you are motivated by challenges and that you look forward to ways to improve your work in the future. The length of your answers should be between 20 seconds and 2 minutes long. You don't want to lose your audience by talking too long or lose their interest by not providing enough detail. The time you spend on answering a question depends on what you are asked. This brings up the most important tip. Make sure you answer the question. This is especially important if you are asked a question with multiple parts and you need to respond to every part of that question. If you are unsure about what was asked, don't hesitate to ask the interviewer to repeat or clarify the question that they posed. You want to be sure you are providing an appropriate response. Let's move on to the situational questions. Similar to behavior-based questions, these questions will be framed around problem solving and will ask about your strategies in handling difficult situations. Since they are situational questions, you do not have to have a story to tell. However, if you have experienced the situation being discussed and you have a story to tell, it will make for a stronger answer. The first example question reads, how would you handle a situation when your team resisted a new idea you introduced? Answer this question honestly. Talk about how you would handle your ideas being rejected, but discuss your open-mindedness about it and ability to not take offense or be unmotivated to present other ideas in the future. Next, what would you do if you were assigned to work closely on a project with a colleague who you did not get along well with? This question is framed around your ability to cooperate, demonstrate patience, and complete an assignment regardless of the challenges. Provide an answer that tells the interviewer that you will still get the job done while maintaining positive energy. Next example, how would you handle immediate criticism from a supervisor? This is similar to the first example, as you need to demonstrate that instead of taking offense, you can accept the criticism and apply the feedback you received to improve your work. The last example question reads, What would you do if you were almost finished with a project on a tight deadline and you had to start over because of a mistake that you made? You should convey to the interviewer that you are serious about presenting quality work and would put in more effort to still finish the project according to the deadline without taking shortcuts. Keep in mind, situational questions are largely hypothetical, so your responses will not just rely on past experiences, but instead reflect on your problem-solving skills. By the end of the interview, you will have an opportunity to ask questions when the interviewer says, "What questions do you have for me?" Be prepared with at least 2 questions. You may have come up with additional questions during your interview. This is why it's important to bring a Padfolio and a pen in case you need to jot anything down. You should ask the interviewer a question that refers to their expectations for a successful candidate. Here's 2 examples. In the next 6 months, what would I have needed to accomplish for you to say that I was a good hire? Or you can ask, what are you looking for in a successful candidate for this position? Again, both of these get at the employer's expectations, which will help you frame any final remarks that you may have that reiterate your qualifications for the job. You can also ask, how will I be evaluated? This gives you an idea of what ways your work will be assessed and also tells the interviewer that you are success-driven. Finally, you should end with asking the interviewer about the next steps. You need to leave the interview having an idea about how soon they are looking to make a decision. This helps with your planning and timeline in case you are applying to multiple job opportunities. When to negotiate. You should negotiate when you know the going salary rate and the offer is below that. Don't negotiate when the employer has clearly stated there is a standard starting salary for all, or when the salary is in range but you need more money to meet your expenses. What to negotiate? You can negotiate salary, paid time off, or any perks, including parking reimbursement, tuition reimbursement, health club membership, and training. Next, we will discuss the 5 keys to successful negotiation. Negotiate at the end, never go first, know the salary range, which means you have to do your research, know your value, and negotiate benefits. How you finish matters. You want to close the interview strong. Reiterate your interest in the position and why you feel that you are a good fit. Show appreciation and say thank you to those who took time to interview you. Decisions are made fast, so send a thank you note by email within 24 hours. If you met and interviewed with multiple staff members, send one note to everyone with the appropriate greeting. Otherwise, send one thank you note to the person you met with and interviewed with. Here's an example of a thank you note. Your subject should say thank you with your first and last name. Make sure you address the person you are emailing with the appropriate article, Mr. or Miss, in their last name. In your note, mention something specific that you remember from the interview. This tells the employer how intentional and interested you are in the position. Your email and phone number should match the information from your application. And always end your thank you note with sincerely and with your full name. Final reminders. Practice, practice, practice. Know your stories. Research specific interview questions. Schedule a mock interview appointment with Career Services, and you can practice on a website called Big Interview. To complete your mock interview, please schedule a mock interview appointment via handshake with an advisor at the Career Center. To schedule an appointment, go to jcu.joinhandshake.com and log in. Click on Career Center in the top right corner and then Appointments to see available appointment days and times. Please review the mock interview rubric before your appointment, which can be found under the Interviewing module on your Canvas Professional Development page. Career Services is now located in Grosselli Library in the Mastrantoni Family Student Success Commons. Hope to see you there.